Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Thursday, June 2nd. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. New gas price records every day, higher costs at the checkout stand. We're all feeling the inflation impact. And now state lawmakers are offering help, but it might not be what you were expecting. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado tells us many hope they can agree to help families who are struggling.
Berta and Santiago Soto are unloading their farm-grown produce at the new farmers market in Linda Vista. But their minds are preoccupied with the high cost of traveling to farmers markets from their farm in Fallbrook.
Muchísimo.
Gas prices have had a tremendous impact on the cost of operations of our small family farm. We've had to increase prices, but we can't increase them so much because then we won't sell anything. But sometimes we can't even cover the cost of gas.
They're far away from Sacramento, but what is done there will affect them. Right now, politicians are trying to figure out what to do with a nearly $90 billion budget surplus and the budget in general. Berta and Santiago hope it includes relief for higher gas prices at the pump that are seeping their way into everything they do and will affect the future of their farm.
We often think about closing the farm. We work so hard and it's all for nothing sometimes. We just can't make a profit.
And it's really sad to see. I know people are pinching pennies.
San Diego Council member Raul Campillo says his office has been flooded with emails and calls from his constituents who want something to be done about inflation.
And they want to know what sort of subsidy can they get, what's the plan at the state, what are the governor and the legislature thinking about doing, because it really is making families stretch even more thinly.
The legislative proposal for the nearly $240 billion budget includes an $8 billion relief fund for Californians struggling with higher gas prices and inflation. This will include $200 refunds per taxpayer and dependent.
What I really want to see is something happen sooner rather than later. I think the governor and the legislature need to negotiate a more quick solution to the problem.
Berta has a message for Sacramento, too.
Yes, please help us more because we just can't make it. Not like this.
The budget deadline is June 15th. Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
The legislative state budget proposal has billions of dollars earmarked to support students and school districts. KPBS education reporter MG Perez takes a look at the impact on the state's second largest district, San Diego Unified, which celebrated its diversity today.
There wasn't much wind this morning, but there was plenty of pride and purpose outside the San Diego Unified School District's administration building. Early every June, there is a flag-raising ceremony to honor the district's LGBTQIA+ students, families, and staff.
The pride flag is a symbol and a powerful one, but symbols lose their meaning without action behind them.
The district proudly promotes its growing curriculum of inclusion and diversity, an effective bully reporting system, and transgender-affirming policies. Matthew Toriano is one of the newly elected student members of the Board of Education who has finances at the top of his agenda.
I've experienced a lot of economic disparities personally and through my friends. And I feel like I can bring that experience to the table and bring change that I want to see and I want my friends to see.
The flag-raising event comes on the heels of the release of the legislative state budget proposal, a proposal that includes $300 million to fund transitional kindergarten programs geared for students from low-income families. There is also an increase of $1.2 billion for school transportation to fund electric buses and other zero to low emission vehicles. And higher education would get $2 billion to develop more student housing at California. state universities and community colleges. The legislature's proposal adds almost $10 billion to a very important formula. The formula that determines how much the state contributes to local school districts like San Diego Unified. Enrique Ruancho is the district's new chief of staff, who is keeping close tabs on the state's financial commitment.
What we learned through the pandemic is that schools are critical not only to the economy of the state, but to the future of the state as well.
That future includes these students representing marginalized communities and the other newly elected student school board member who is a junior at Scripps Ranch High School. Meet Leah Nepomuceno and her agenda.
Equity and empowerment, and that includes upholding restorative justice policies, gun violence prevention, menstrual product accessibility, school lunch inclusivity.
So we need to recognize, yes, we need funding, but we need to show up with our hearts, and we need more love in education.
Love and pride to recognize the problems and honor the progress.
Pride to me is being able to express myself everywhere and not needing to be embarrassed of my identity or put into a box because of my expression.
There is hope that change for education is in the air. MG Perez, KPBS News.
Moments ago, President Biden announced he's calling for stronger gun control laws, and it's happened again. Another deadly mass shooting, this one in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at a hospital. Reporter Isabel Rosales is tracking the latest on this one, as well as Uvalde and Buffalo.
Fear and panic. Yet another mass shooting in America. This time at a hospital campus in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
It was complete chaos as people ran out.
A shooter opening fire Wednesday. Police say he killed 2 doctors, a receptionist, and a patient.
This terrible scene. It's awful. It's sad.
A major update from Tulsa's police chief, who says the shooter targeted this doctor who performed back surgery on him, blaming him for ongoing pain.
We have also found a letter on the suspect which made it clear that he came in with the intent to kill Dr. Phillips.
And according to 3 federal sources, the gunman bought the AR-15 style firearm on the same day as the shooting. Meanwhile, in New York, the 18-year-old indicted in last month's racist supermarket shooting, appearing in court Thursday, pleading not guilty. All this as the tributes pour in. And new details emerge out of Uvalde, Texas. The mayor says a negotiator tried to call the killer. It's contrary to training, calling for officers to immediately confront active shooters.
I think the truth will come out, and if we made mistakes, we'll own those mistakes.
Inconsistencies shadowing the police's response as Americans look on and ask, how did this happen?
You can't even go to a store. You can't even go to school. Now you can't even go to the doctor.
Isabel Rosales, KPBS News.
The CDC is warning the pandemic is not over, and it's likely we'll see an all-new surge of new COVID-19 cases this summer. Here in San Diego County, another 1,620 cases were reported just today. County health officials say weekly average cases have more than tripled in the past 30 days. Recent studies suggest new variants can get past immunity barriers made by vaccines and past infections. CDC officials say new variants made up to 7% of new infections in the U.S. in late May, a big jump from 0.02% only a month ago. The first presumptive case of monkeypox has been reported in Los Angeles. The County Department of Public Health says it's awaiting final confirmation from the CDC. The patient is an adult resident who recently traveled and had a known close contact to a case of monkeypox. The patient is said to be doing well and is isolating. Monkeypox is a viral infection endemic in parts of Africa, but cases have been reported recently in the U.S. Immigration advocates are demanding an end to Title 42 as they held funerals today for 2 men in Mexico. Both were migrants from Haiti who died in Tijuana while waiting for a chance at asylum in the U.S. One of the men was robbed and murdered. The other died of a heart attack after being denied medical care.
Every other week, we literally have a funeral here in Tijuana. Every other week. The community is in fear. They are literally afraid that tomorrow will be them.
The Biden administration has been criticized for not ending Title 42, the policy that makes migrants wait to claim asylum due to COVID concerns. The CDC tried to end it in May, but a federal judge in Louisiana ruled it had to continue, saying the administration did not take the proper steps. The largest corruption scandal in Navy history, sweeping up more than 24 Navy officials, may be finally coming to a close. Closing arguments began today in the so-called Fat Leonard case. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh has this report.
Most of the officers have pleaded guilty to accepting bribes from Leonard Francis. He is the Malaysian contractor who wanted to steer the Navy to his ports in the Western Pacific. In 2015, Leonard ultimately pleaded guilty to overcharging the government by $35 million. After 14 weeks, the trial of the last 5 naval officers under the indictment is nearing an end, with the man called Fat Leonard never taking the stand. In closing arguments Thursday, federal prosecutor Mark Fletcher focused the jury on emails between the men charged, Francis, and other officers who have already pleaded guilty in the nearly decade-long corruption probe. Fletcher said the defendants took care of Leonard Francis because, time and time again, he took care of them. In exchange for sensitive information, Francis paid for lavish parties in Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Manila, stays at fancy hotels, luxury items, and top-shelf champagne. Prosecutors say each officer played a different role in the conspiracy. Rear Admiral Bruce Loveless, the highest-ranking officer on trial, is charged with accepting bribes. The lawyers for each defendant begin closing arguments Monday. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
The city of Vista got nearly $2 million to help homeless people living in an encampment. But when the city put out a call for someone to run a homeless shelter, it got no takers. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne has the story.
Earlier this year, the city of Vista accepted a $1.8 million encampment resolution grant from California's Interagency Council on Homelessness. The grant is intended to help people living in encampments in the Buena Vista watershed area. Lourdes Castro Ramirez is with the state agency that provided the grant. She's been visiting the encampments that received the award and meeting with city partners. Vista was the only San Diego city to receive the grant.
I had an opportunity to meet with the city, to meet with the county sheriff's department, to meet with Exodus and the various partners that are working together to ensure that individuals that are living in encampments have access to services and ultimately are able to move into stable housing environments.
73-year-old Jim Conley currently lives in the encampment. He says while he has noticed more outreach from the city, he's lost when it comes to his status on getting housing assistance.
They came up to me and asked me a couple of questions, and I told them the truth, and the next thing I know, I was out of the program.
Conley says he wants to get out of the encampment.
I don't want anything. All I want is a room, you know. They could keep my money, just a room to sleep in at night. It's getting cold, and it's summer.
He shared that he gets around $700 a month for Social Security.
You know, I get my retirement and all that, but it's just not. If they could put some place up for people, you know, just something, you know, pay what you can, you know.
The city of Vista was requesting proposals for a homeless shelter, but no applications were submitted. Silvia Solis Daniels is the housing program manager for the city of Vista. She reached out to providers to understand why there was no interest.
A lot of our providers are seeing the increase in homelessness and the increased cost of addressing homelessness. And it's a challenge for our providers. So it's not just that there's not a need, it's just the growing challenges that there's not enough resources available for these providers.
She says the city has now changed gears and is looking into developing permanent supportive housing and a safe parking area. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
We all know that rents and housing prices are skyrocketing, and that market is becoming just one more insurmountable challenge for San Diego child care providers. KPBS reporter Claire Tregeser explains.
Go outside with my lantern goes with me.
A dozen young children sit in a circle on the sun-speckled lawn of Liberty Wynn's home childcare in Carlsbad.
We are Oasis. mighty, mighty oasis.
After singing their school song, she dismisses them one by one to leave the circle, visit the potty, and then pick out their snacks.
Okay, how about Zayden?
Z-A-D-E-N.
The idyllic scene belies the more than 2 years of turmoil Wynn has faced in the age of COVID. She was forced to close when the pandemic first hit in March of 2020. She wasn't able to reopen for 2 months.
And then within 2 weeks, we got the eviction.
Her landlord said he was moving back into the home Wynn was renting. She frantically searched for a new place where she could both live and have her childcare business. She ultimately found the building in Carlsbad. But it wasn't suitable for a daycare, so Wynn had to take out a federal emergency disaster relief loan and spend $20,000 on the property.
I had to put a lot of the loan money into this place because it's on a lake. It's lovely, it's gorgeous, but it was a huge risk.
Her lease will be up this summer, and Wynn just received more bad news. Her landlord has plans to turn the property instead into a luxury Airbnb. So Wynn is out of business again, this time permanently.
So our last day is August 26th. Oasis of San Diego will be ending.
This historically tight housing market has created a crisis on top of a crisis for childcare providers. First, the pandemic walloped the already fragile industry. State data show that 1 in 8 childcare businesses temporarily closed during the past 2 years. And now many are struggling to reopen due to staggering rental costs.
It puts the providers in a terribly vulnerable position.
Laura Cohn is a long-term early education expert.
The child care provider is totally dependent on that rental situation for their livelihood, and that moving the business would be incredibly disruptive to a lot of parents and families, as well as to the provider's business.
Without government funding to help providers, childcare availability will continue to decline, says Kim McDougall, who runs childcare for the San Diego County YMCA.
The funding mechanism for childcare is truly broken, and the way we have built our economic model is truly broken, and that's something that we really need to address going forward if we're going to solve the childcare crisis, because parents can't pay more, providers can't charge less, and it's never going to match up without public subsidy to close the gap.
A subsidy certainly would have helped Wynn in Carlsbad. She will have to pack up or sell everything, from the art supplies and tiny tables and chairs to the aquariums holding snakes and turtles. And all of the money she put into the property will be lost.
I was so grateful to have found my calling and have a business that was flourishing, and I seem to be in my element. So that's just the best. If I really think about it, I'm just quite vulnerable, and that's what I'm noticing.
The kids at her school and their parents will have to find new care when Wynn moves. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
SDG&E is offering an incentive program to reduce energy when the state power grid is hit with some high demand. The Power Saver Rewards program can be activated anytime between now and October 31st, whenever the California Independent System Operator issues an alert. Customers will be notified a day ahead to conserve, and those able to reduce energy use between the hours of 4 and 9 p.m. below their typical energy use during these peak hours will receive a $2 credit for each kilowatt hour of electricity saved. There is no penalty for not reducing energy use. For more information, you can visit SDG&E website.
Let's take a look at our weather headlines, and as we check them out, what do we see here? Well, we have a cooling trend, and the cooler air spreads a little bit further inland, and coming along for the ride will be the night and morning clouds. So we'll see plenty of night and morning clouds penetrating to the interior valleys as the cooling spreads in. And during the afternoons, next couple of days, breezy right into the evening hours. But next week, we should see a little bit of a warm up. But here's that trough we were talking about yesterday. It's edging closer, and as it gets closer, we'll start to see that cooling getting a little bit more dominant here. Overnight tonight, so we're down to 62. Clouds, they'll be on the increase, and they'll be spreading inland. Oceanside down to 59 tonight. El Cajon at 58. Ramona 51. Mount Laguna at 61. And Borrego Springs nice and warm. 71 for a low. Now, as we take a look at the weather for Friday, well, after the morning clouds, we'll see more sunshine by the afternoon. Those clouds will be stubborn, though, right near the coast at the beaches. As we take a look at our temperatures, Oceanside 71. San Diego's at 70, so we're right on the averages here. Interior section still a little bit on the warm side. Ramon is up to 85. Then during the day on Saturday, well, we have that trough approaching. Get a little breezy in the afternoon there. And on Sunday, pretty much the same story. But as we take a look ahead, show you the upper flow here on Monday to Tuesday. Start to see the ridge here starting to build. So as that ridge builds, we'll see some gradual warming next week. Here's our extended forecast for you. Clouds and sun. And temperatures start to rise a little bit into early next week. Interior valleys, we'll see more clouds in the morning hours, cools off. And then next week, a little bit milder. And as we check out the mountains, breezy and cool into the weekend. Milder next week, and in the deserts. Plenty of sunshine. A little bit breezy for the weekend and a touch warmer next week. And for KPBS News, I am meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
Despite higher costs and a potential recession, businesses across the country keep hiring employees. The monthly employment report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics is due to be released tomorrow. Economists expect the report to say some 350,000 jobs were added last month with an unemployment rate of 3.5%. That would be a new pandemic-era low. The labor market has nearly recovered, but is about 1.2 million jobs short of where it was before the shutdowns began. When you think of dangerous jobs, mail carrier probably doesn't come to mind, but the job can turn dangerous in an instant if a dog decides to attack. Dog Bite Awareness Week begins on Sunday, and tonight KPBS reporter John Carroll shows us how the Postal Service works to keep its carriers safe.
It's the Postal Service's unofficial motto. Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. But dogs can.
We should talk about the message of 6,000 carriers being bitten every year.
In Mission Valley's Savita Park today, a demonstration of what mail carriers are trained to do when confronted by a threatening dog. In addition to using their satchel as a shield, San Diego Postmaster Lisa Baldwin says there are other safeguards.
Resist the impulse to scream and run away if approached by a dog. Avoid eye contact with the dog. Once the dog has calmed down, they are to back away. They must never assume that a dog won't bite.
The humor of Halloween display Bubba here notwithstanding, the issue of mail carriers getting bitten is a serious one. And when it comes to that, San Diego isn't doing so well. Mail carriers in San Diego were bitten 31 times last year. That puts us at number 11 nationwide. LA came in fourth with 44 bites, and Cleveland mail carriers got bitten 58 times last year, putting them at number 1.
I have been bitten, and it was not a fun experience.
Carlos Dominguez was attacked by 2 dogs last year in the Grantville area. He was able to fend one off, but the other one bit him.
I kept calm. I kept my composure. I utilized the tools that I have available, and I was able to get out of the situation relatively harmless.
There can be consequences for residents who don't control their dogs. If a mail carrier feels unsafe, mail delivery can be suspended. Something to keep in mind so that these couriers can continue the swift and safe completion of their appointed rounds. John Carroll, KPBS News.
San Diego International Fringe Festival returns to in-person live theater today after a 2-year pandemic break. The festival offers 11 days of wildly diverse shows from artists around the globe, as well as from here in San Diego. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando has this quick primer on what Fringe is.
So what's this Fringe thing?
That's a good question. It's uncensored, it's unjuried, it's open access, completely, so anybody that wants to do a show can.
It's an assault on your senses with a wildly diverse array of entertainment.
It's a complete goulash of arts. There's dance and physical theater and opera and comedy and some crazy people from Japan that are just crazy and you never know what to expect.
It's 11 days of eyeball-busting shows from around the globe and from local artists.
My name, Lazarus, and Fringe is DIY. I found it's like my tribe, and I think for artists like me who are different, it's perfect.
Traditional theater, where everybody's telling you exactly what you're supposed to do, and to do something that may be a little shocking, and having it in a venue like this, which is Les Girls Theater.
San Diego International Fringe Festival returns to live and in-person shows June 2nd through the 12th at multiple venues, but with its home base in Balboa Park. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.